of our platforms, including Mesoamerican Studies Online Instagram. Hello, everyone over there. I'm just going to share my screen really quick to do the usual intro. Oh, and of course, it's not showing me the tab I want to share. So give me 1 second. There we go. You guys, my computer's going to be nice and slow today, too, it seems.
This is season.
Right, exactly. It's funny, I'm sitting like right next to my router, too. It's like still sad. I think it's more my device than my internet, though. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us for another Crewing the Ship stream with Mesoamerican Studies Online. This is our Port Ancient Partnership highlight featuring Katie Nuckols, who is on the stream with us. Parthika from SASA is also here with us today. So what is SASA? SASA stands for Save Ancient Studies Alliance. We work to promote the study of the ancient world and engagement with our human deeper past, building a grassroots movement through outreach, collaboration, accessibility, and public scholarship. We work towards our goal of inspiring a wide, inclusive community of scholars, learners, and students. We do this in many ways. We have a ton of projects. We have a searchable database. We have a lot of different live streams. Our reading group's coming up, which we'll talk about a little bit later with Katie. We do Archeo Gaming stuff, Archeo Gaming modules for teachers and live streams, and many more awesome projects that you should go and check out and follow us, as the next slide will say, follow us on social media to find information about these projects. You can search Save Ancient Studies Alliance basically anywhere. We post on social media pretty much every day. Our live streams go out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch and are archived there, so you can catch things after they are live as well. Some protocol for the event. Please be kind and respectful. Listen and ask thoughtful questions. We definitely want to hear from you in the chat. We are here to answer your questions and have you learn what you want to learn about Mesoamerican Studies Online. Please be patient with technology. My computer seems to be going slow today, so hopefully we can get through this smoothly. And again, the recordings will be saved on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Last but not least, if you like what you see from SASA, we are an NGO that is almost completely run by volunteers, except for grants that we get. You can make any size donation or become a recurring donor for as little as $3 a month, and really anything helps. With that, thank you very much for joining us. And I will, I guess, maybe hand it over to Katie to introduce herself and Mesoamerican Studies Online.
Great, yeah. And I have a PowerPoint, but I'm also, I know that for people on Instagram in particular, I'm seeing that it might be cutting it off a little bit. So I have a PowerPoint if that's useful. People can let me know in the chat if they'd like to see that, but I can just talk through a lot of this. So my name is Katie or Catherine Nuckols. I am a recent PhD from Tulane University. I just submitted my dissertation and I'm being hooded next week. So I am officially done. And I founded Mesoamerican Studies Online back in 2019 because when I was in grad school, I wanted to be, on the bus listening to things and learning more about ancient Mesoamerica, about this side of the world that I was digging deeper into. And there wasn't a single podcast about Mesoamerica. And so I thought about it for a while and then decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to create a podcast that will talk about what's going on right now in studies of the ancient Mesoamerican world. And so the podcast was really the genesis of it. It was the beginning. And then I started adding in blog posts. I've got a few blog posts, and some of them have been with special guests from, friends and colleagues that I've worked with who have added their thoughts into the blog. And then, of course, online courses. I absolutely love teaching. It's something I'm very passionate about. And so I wanted to be able to share this information with the general public in a way that was a little bit more accessible than a university course, a little bit more affordable, at least in U.S. university courses. And so I created Mesoamerican Studies Online, and it's grown and changed in a lot of different ways. The podcast now has a co-host, Tony DeLuca, who is a fantastic archaeologist specializing in West Mexico. And yeah, it's been a really great experience. I've been partnering with the Save Ancient Studies Alliance since 2020, I believe. This is,
Yeah, pretty early, yeah.
yeah, it's been a while. I think this is my fourth summer. This is going to be my
Right.
fourth summer working with SASA. So it's been a very fulfilling part of that, is being able to find other communities that are just as passionate about the study of the ancient world as I am, and as I hope to be with Mesoamerican Studies Online.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I always have to say, whenever we like have stuff, we're always like Mesoamerican Studies Online is like the Mesoamerican version of SASA. Like, as you know, SASA tries to promote all areas, and
Mhm.
Meso is focused on Mesoamerican studies, but we do a lot of similar things. Katie's courses are very similar to our reading groups, and Katie does reading groups with us. um, and so we'll talk about that in a little bit, because we're very excited about the reading group that Katie has coming this summer. And this is definitely a sneak peek because there have been no advertisements for that yet. Really quick, I will put this up later too, but I will show the QR code for Mesoamerican Studies Online. This is Katie's page or website. So go check them out there. Also follow them on social media at usually Mesoamerican Studies Online or Meso Online.
Yeah,
Um,
on Instagram, it's Mesoamerican Studies Online, and on Twitter or X, it's just Meso Online.
Mhm. Awesome. So definitely go follow her there. Okay, actually, the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is your summer course stuff, because that is something that Katie has going on right now, and there are kind of, or kind of talk about how it's structured. I guess I don't want to say if I'm wrong about how I'm thinking. It works, and actually, we have the link for that. Thank you, Parthika, for being amazing.
Yeah, so I I have a teaching platform where there are courses that are available at any time during the year, but I wanted to do some special summer courses right now, particularly because, I just graduated. I wanted to have some time to really just sink in and sit with this material and enjoy, first of all, enjoy being able to do it without the pressure of having a dissertation to write at the same time, right? Previous summers I've taught courses, but I've also had to be doing my own research on the side, and so I wanted to be able to dig a little bit deeper. And so essentially each of these courses meets once a week for an hour. There's one that runs for an hour and a half, and they are an introduction to whatever the topic is. So I currently, right now, I've got one that focuses on ancient Maya art and power, that examines how the Maya used art to communicate power. There's another one that's looking at Maya mythology and ceramics, which is actually a course that I've developed from the different courses that I've taught with SASA over the summers. It's sort of an amalgamation of those reading groups that I put together. And then I have a course that's actually starting in just under 2 weeks that is reading and writing Maya glyphs. The first iteration of this course is reading Maya glyphs, and that was sort of the baby. That was my very first baby of the summer courses, because I specialize in ancient Maya hieroglyphic writing. It's one of my greatest passions in life. And so I knew I was going to teach a course on how to read Maya hieroglyphs, especially because there are none available on the internet, or at least there weren't when I started doing this. And so I wanted there to be a way for people to learn without having to enroll in a university course or go to a special conference and learn these things or have to teach themselves. It's so valuable to have a teacher. And so I started out with this course on reading Maya hieroglyphs. And then this summer, I'm actually partnering with a really close friend of mine, Julia Kausch, who is an artist living in Germany who recreates ancient Maya art by hand using a paintbrush and watercolor. And so it's sort of a new version. It's a 1.5 of the course, right? Where instead of meeting for an hour each week, we're going to meet for an hour and a half. So we'll go over how to read Maya glyphs each week. And this one's a 6-week course, I should say. So we will go over one of the principles of learning how to read Maya hieroglyphs, and then Julia will take half an hour to go over some of the principles, tips, and tricks for learning how to write and paint Maya hieroglyphs. So it's really meant to be interactive. It's meant to be hands-on. And what I love about it is that it's a great pedagogical tool. One of the things that I've learned over and over and over again as a student of Maya hieroglyphs and as a teacher is that you learn more about how to read these glyphs by writing them yourself. You understand them more by creating them. And so I'm really excited to see how this course goes. I'm excited to teach people how to read and to have a friend teach people how to write. And I think it's going to be a really, really exciting course. So yeah, I'm happy to keep talking about courses.
Well,
I'm
that's
gonna
what
let
we're
you
here
guide
for.
there.
No, that's what we're here for. So it's good. And I do love that. Katie did a condensed down version, similar version of this with Sasa for a masterclass, right? Or was it a reading group? Was
Yeah,
it a few weeks or
we
was it
did a
just
master class first,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
I think I've done a small reading group on it.
Right, where we carved glyphs in soap, and I like literally still have my little soap glyph. And it was fun, and like people enjoyed doing this kind of interactive thing. And again, you really like get it more too. It was interesting too because again, it was like actually carving it into the soap. Not so maybe some people didn't have soap, so they could just write it. But like carving, it's like you see these beautiful, intricate, perfect carvings and then your soap chips off in the wrong way and it messes the whole thing up. Like imagine doing it in stone.
Mhm.
It was so fun
Right.
to do this master class. So, and I was there for it, so I'm not even just saying that other people had fun. I personally had fun.
Yeah, no,
So
I had fun.
yeah. And it was just such a cool idea to do it like that too, because it really translates over to other places well too. So like that's something that a teacher could have seen and been like, oh, like I could totally do this in my class. You could do it with like Play-Doh or clay or
Mhm,
something too,
mhm.
just to get that sense of like doing it yourself and not necessarily just writing. Although writing is another thing versus painting and whatever. So it's so interesting, and that's the kind of stuff that Katie talks about in the class. So I love it. So because yes, of course, again, these are very related to SAS's reading groups that we have going on. So maybe now is a good time to talk a little bit about the group that Katie's going to do with SASA this summer. So this summer we changed up our structure of them a little bit, and we have groups that are 5 consecutive week groups that are more geared towards teachers. And people who maybe have a little bit of background knowledge already and are a little bit more intense, you might want to say, although still not intense, but that lean a little bit more towards how Katie's actual classes go versus our reading groups are usually much more discussion style, discussion based. Of course, everything's all open access resources still with either of them, but it's a much more lax kind of community vibe kind of thing. And this one will be a little bit more teaching how to teach, that kind of stuff. So Katie is leading one of those new groups that is a little bit more geared toward teachers and stuff. So we're very excited. She's led a few groups with us in the past. And like she said with hers too, it's a little bit of a step up from what our groups were in the past. So again, always have very reflective things from each other. And it's great because our audiences love it. So yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about your reading group that you have for over the summer.
Yeah, so this reading group is actually going to focus on Pakal the Great, Kinichana Pakal from the side of Palenque. He's arguably one of the most famous Maya rulers. I think quite a few of us have heard of him because of his tomb, this huge burial that he had that's still unparalleled in the Maya world as far as the volume, the intensity, the quantity of artifacts and objects and effort that went into creating the tomb. So I wanted to look at the legacy left by Pakal through the writings that talk about him. And Palenque is a fantastic site for that because it has quite a few hieroglyphic inscriptions that reference Pakal and the mythology associated with him and with the site of Palenque. So Palenque has quite a few very lengthy hieroglyphic texts that talk about the mythological origins of Palenque, the way that Kinichana Pakal sort of reinforced and validated that mythology and that origin story. And there's quite a few poetic elements in it too. And so I wanted to be able to really dive into the texts and really just discuss the content of them, right? I feel like something that I do a lot in my reading Maya glyphs courses is teach people how to read the glyphs. But sometimes we spend so much time learning how to read the glyphs, which is a very important first step, but we spend so much time in that step that we don't get to talk about what the texts actually say and how they say it. And so this course is going to be a moment to be able to sit with the translations of the text. Obviously, I think there's going to necessarily be a discussion of how to read the text, but the texts themselves are going to be the focus. And I'm an art historian by trade, by training, and so we're obviously going to talk about the imagery associated with these texts because it adds just another layer to what the text is saying. And my whole dissertation was about this connection between writing and art. But so this course is meant to look at the legacy of Pakal, the way that he spoke about the city that he lived in. That he didn't found it, but he really brought it to the forefront of the Maya world. So I want to examine the way that he talked about the city, and then the way that his children and grandchildren talked about him. There are quite a few texts that we're going to look at that are retrospectives, where we have his sons talking about the kind of ruler he was, and his grandson talking about the things that he did, and the way that they tried to anchor themselves in Pakal's legacy to reinforce their own legitimacy. So it's going to be a really good time to just really just sit and chew on the text and the content of these hieroglyphic inscriptions in a way that at least I haven't been able to do before with Sasa, and I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah, no, that is really exciting. I was going to say a lot of, I don't know. I feel like it trends more towards slightly more introductory stuff tends to be a bit more archaeological a lot, or maybe that's just my comparison with like, okay, maybe in like classical Greece, they focus a little bit more on literature stuff and archaeological stuff. But in a lot of other places, it focuses a lot more on archaeological stuff. So of course they go hand in hand with each other, because without the archaeological stuff, we don't have the written stuff
Right. Yeah.
in a lot of cases. But yeah, to really analyze the literature in a deeper way is also a great thing to do. And again, something that we do all the time with like Greek classics and whatever. Why don't we do it with this other stuff? And it plays into a lot of those kinds of fun westernized things about like, oh, but Greeks did this and Greeks did it first and whatever. It's like, no, these people were doing this over here too and doing this over here too. So that's the reason why we love Katie and we're always trying to represent as many cultures as possible. But that's another thing too. Actually, this is something that I wanted to bring up with you too, because we've been, a big thing with Sasa is this whole like reversing the downward trend, obviously saving ancient studies type thing. So what's going on in the Mesoamerican studies world of that? Of course, in the more traditional, what you think of ancient studies, classical Greece, Roman area, it's still on a downward trend, even though those are the popular ones still, and the ones that all of these Western societies, at least, are so reflective of and whatever. So yes, what is going on in the Mesoamerican world with stuff like that?
Yeah, I think there's a very conscious push right now to talk about Mesoamerica as a region, but also as a region composed of individual units. And so there's, we have, I'm not going to give you the whole story about Mesoamerican studies and how, we've sort of moved away from it. But I think that it's something that people are really starting to acknowledge and work towards, is to incorporate groups besides the big ones, right? I am a Mayanist, and the Maya are arguably, the Maya and the Aztec are kind of like the two big cultures of Mesoamerica. And so I always want to make sure that I'm making space and incorporating the ways that the Maya were influenced by other parts of Mesoamerica and how they influenced other parts of Mesoamerica. And this was a huge reason why I wanted to, when I was looking for a co-host for the podcast, I wanted someone who would bring a different perspective. And so Tony, my co-host, he's an archaeologist who works in West Mexico. West Mexico is the region that is always forgotten when we're talking about Mesoamerica, largely because its culture was so different, right? It had different architectural styles. Its art was very different. They didn't have a writing system, at least not that one that we would recognize as such based on our current definition. And so I think that Mesoamerican studies, or the general idea of Mesoamerica, is starting to recognize the need to incorporate all of the different smaller groups, right? And so it's something that I always have to be very conscious of, especially as a Mayanist, right? There's one of my advisors once talked about oh, what did she say? It was mycetosis or something like that, where archaeologists and art historians get so focused on the one region or the one site that they work on that they forget about everything else. And
Right.
so, you know, I try to be conscious and try to make sure that we're talking about other regions of Mesoamerica, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something that's it's part of a movement of the field, and I think too this is something that I do want to highlight very briefly is that especially with the comparisons that you were making, right, with how we can talk about the literature of ancient Greece and all of these other cultures, and Mesoamerica hasn't really gotten that much attention. But I think what's really important to highlight is that the study of ancient Mesoamerica is so incredibly young compared to the study of
Yeah.
all of these other cultures, right? Egyptology has hundreds of years
Mhm.
of study and understanding. And, you know, it really has only been since maybe I mean, 70s and 80s were a huge breakthrough in being able to read Maya hieroglyphs. So we're
Mhm.
looking at maybe 50 years of a basic understanding. But even
Right.
in the past 15 to 20 years, the readings that we have for these inscriptions has changed radically. And so our
Mhm.
understanding of Mesoamerica and how the Maya fit within that Mesoamerican umbrella has changed as we've come to understand more about how they wrote about themselves and what they said about
Right.
themselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting and something that, like you said, it's like this overarching push in the field and in the ancient studies field overarchingly as well, and obviously something that Tassa believes in, of connecting cultures together more. Like these places were connected or they had histories that built on each other and stuff like that. But humans absolutely love to compartmentalize things and label things and whatever. But that's not how the world actually works. People travel
Mhm,
and do stuff and
mhm.
talk to each other and build up their cultures in different ways. And like, it's not just Western white people that have done that either. Like, again, it's like these known, everyone knows everyone. The one that people will teach is, of course, Greece took over Egypt at some point and whatever. I honestly have no idea what's going on with things. And I'm like in the ancient studies world, you know, it's like,
Yeah,
um, so yeah, there's so much more of a rich history, and people are really pushing for those kinds of stories to be told more, whether it's indigenous people's things or you know, however you again want to categorize it, but the past of other places, um, and you have to teach it to learn about it.
mhm.
So you know that's a big thing with this whole downward trend thing of like if that's like lost, it's lost kind of thing. And then it's funny because you learn about it and you're like, oh, how did people forget about this knowledge during the dark ages of different, you know, any different civilization? And it's like that's what's like actively happening right now. But then it's worse because of social media and things with misinformation about things. And then what is going to be remembered is the crazy not right stuff. Like, what if aliens in the future only have a Netflix account and see ancient aliens and like books about things and stuff like that? You know what I
Right?
mean?
Let's hope they
um,
also have a Disney Plus so they can see Nat Geo.
right. So, you know, there's just so much going on in these fields and trying to stay relevant in those kind of ways. And again, a big thing that Mezzo and Sass are both doing is trying to keep ancient studies relevant to these conversations that people are having and whatever. These were human beings just like us living in different times. And there's a lot to learn from that from everywhere around the world. Um,
Absolutely.
okay. Parthika, do you have any questions you wanted to specifically ask?
Right. So, of course, maintaining a project takes a lot of work. So, what has been your most important source of motivation throughout the whole process?
That's a good question. Honestly, the biggest source of motivation for me over and over again is people who interact and just sort of remind me that this stuff is valuable, right? Every time I hear from someone who, someone will email and say, "Hey, I listened to your episode on X and thought it was great." Or they'll say, "I listened to your episode on X. Have you considered this?" Every time someone really like interacts, it reminds me that there are people out there who are hungry for this information, which is why I started it in the first place, because there wasn't any information about Mesoamerica that was readily available online. And so it's very validating for me to see that, that, and of course I know this, right? But sometimes it feels like you're the only one who cares about this stuff. And
Mhm.
I know that that's not true, but it's so nice to connect with people who share the same passion and the same curiosity for learning about the ancient world.
Mhm.
And so that's really been absolutely one of my biggest motivators throughout all of this. And, trying to do all of this while doing a dissertation, um, by and large, Mesoamerican Studies Online is run by me. And it doesn't, I don't put ads on the podcast because I think that's awful. And like the blog posts are always free. The only thing I charge for are the online courses. This is all largely a one woman show. And when I brought on Tony, it made a world of difference because Tony is a social media whiz, and it's so nice to have someone to work with on the podcast. And so we work together on that. And so it can be really hard, when I'm trying to do my own research, but also trying to keep this community going. And so I love, 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 love connecting with people who encourage me to keep working on it. And also, I'll say, encourage me to remember the position of academia within the broader world. There are people who I really want to collab with, and I'm hoping I can't say anything for sure right now, but I want to work with people who are doing modern podcasts about modern day indigenous spirituality, modern day indigenous beliefs, because it's something that's a very constant reminder to me, right? Is that we're talking about ancient people, but there are people today who are connected to these cultures, and we can't ignore them, and we shouldn't ignore them.
Mhm.
And it's very easy because of that colonial disconnect to
Yeah.
think that there's a difference, but there's so much more similarities than there is difference.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very long answer, but really, to boil it all down to one word, is its connection. It's connection with
Yeah.
people who are interested in having these conversations, who want to learn from me and also challenge me and challenge this community to grow and learn and change.
Mhm. Yes, definitely agree. Again, same with Sasso. Like, we want to hear your feedback and know what you want to learn about, because everyone thinks of things differently. People think of these different pathways of connections of things in their brain, and it could be the coolest thing that someone just randomly has a little side comment about, that would be like the coolest thing to research about or have a class about, and that a lot of other people would actually be interested in. And also another perspective on, okay, that's another thing with learning about ancient history. A lot of stuff is so academic that it's not like thinking about things in any type of actual like creative way and a more like vibrant cultural way. It's like they did this for ritual purposes. But
Right,
like
and
these
and that's
are vibrant cultures. Yeah.
yeah, and that's where I think, that the human factor is so important.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I still in my courses, I still refer back to ideas and connections that participants made in my very first SASA reading group, right?
Hmm.
Had like coming into contact with people who have experience with related or unrelated stuff. It's those connections, right? Connection is what it's really all about. So
Right. Right. Exactly. And we love it.
we love it.
A little
Okay.
bit on the
Now that
flip
we're getting,
side,
oh yeah,
sorry. A little bit on
no,
the
no, go
flip
ahead.
side of the coin, what was the scariest part about it?
Ooh.
Oh, the scariest part was starting. Absolutely. I remember 2019, it was like May or June. I had put together my very first course on hieroglyphic writing. And it was like this like little live workshop. And I had spent weeks and weeks and weeks advertising for it. And I had just started the social media account, you know, like and it was terrifying. And I started the live and one person showed up and I was so scared and so terrified that I didn't know what to do with only one person. And they ended up dropping off and leaving. And I felt so sad. I felt so embarrassed and I didn't know what to do. And now, you know, like now the community has grown. It's still very small, but also now I know what to do if I just get one student, you know? If I get one student, we have a great time. We get to do personalized classes, and that's so much fun. But getting started was the hardest part, wondering if people would be interested, wondering if people cared. I actually did have a company tell me people won't care enough about this, you're wasting your time. And so I, you know, like it was really scary getting started. And you know, it's still small, it's still very much a very tight knit small community. um, but yeah, the scariest part was getting started, and then after that it's been making those connections, and that makes it very valuable.
Right. And then you're part of the community that's making it a bigger thing and making it a more important thing. Because if people aren't stepping up and doing that, basically, then it will just keep being a small thing that goes by the wayside and doesn't seem as important as other areas of study or whatever. And that's obviously crazy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. Partha, do you have any other questions you wanted to ask? Or Katie, do you have any other questions
Yes,
you
one last.
Yeah.
I think my voice is lagging, but you have
Yeah,
definitely
no,
had a
you're
very
okay.
strong formal training in history and ancient studies. So, how do you think that affects you when you're reaching out to a more popular audience?
Mhm. Yeah, this is one thing that I am so passionate about, because especially when we as academics are trained, we're not always given pedagogy that helps us to connect with people who don't have the same training as us. And so when, you know, when I learned to teach, I was being taught how to teach university students who had taken other university classes. And then once I actually started teaching both in the university and with the general public, I realized that it's a very different way of teaching, it's a very different way of connecting with people, where you have to be able to speak to individuals and to be able to figure out how their own experiences have leveraged them and prepared them to learn this material. And it's about helping people make connections between topics. And so for me, it's I feel very strongly about the importance of making this information accessible to the general public, but I also feel very strongly about continuing to do it because it challenges me as an academic and reminds me that no one will care about what I'm doing if I can't tell them why it's important. And this is something that I think speaks to the heart of SASA's mission too, is that being able to study the ancient world reminds us about things that are very human. They're very human truths that we will forget if we don't share them, if we don't talk about them. And so it's very important for me to continue to challenge myself to be able to share with the general public, because it's important for people to know I've learned so much about myself by studying the ancient world, and I feel like it's so important to be able to share this with everyone else. So
Mhm.
there's my little soapbox.
Yeah. No, I love it, and I totally agree. And again, you will see a lot of that similar kind of stuff from SASA. Just the other day, I was having a conversation with John Haberstroh about analyzing sources. So I have a degree in classical civilizations, like classic Greece and Rome. And the biggest thing that I took from that college degree is really learning how to analyze sources and read information and stuff like that, and learning
Yes.
about biases and whatever. And again, these human things that is unavoidable. Anyone saying anything to you has a bias. It is completely unavoidable. it's in the nature of communication between individuals. And learning about that stuff, that's a huge thing. If more people knew how to do that in a better way, what would social
Mhm.
media be like now? and whatever. What kinds of things would we be learning about in school? Because it is more important for them to get not just the colonial perspective on what's happening in America. Like, so like that, yeah, we're big on that kind of stuff, and like why it's overarchingly important for your life and culture and to know about past cultures and whatever, because definitely like the annoying saying of like history repeats itself and whatever, it's not going to look exactly the same, but it's the same idea of what human beings are doing that does keep repeating itself. And stuff like that. So, Katie, amazing answers to things. Thank you so much. Actually, let me put the QR code back on the screen. But first, Katie, is there anything else that you want to maybe talk about or highlight for things Meso has going on?
I don't think so. I would definitely plug the SASA reading group that's coming up. I know more information will be coming out about it soon. And then the summer courses, I will say with the summer courses, I'm only going to be teaching these lives over the summer because I've got, I'm going to have a fellowship coming up that I can't talk too much about yet, but I'm going to be working very hard on my next project in the fall. So if you wanted to take a live course, this is probably going to be the last time for another year that I'll be able to do it. I'll have courses that people can do on their own, available afterwards and throughout this next year. But as far as like the live courses, this is going to be the last time that I do it for another year. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So that is the QR code that's on the screen right now is to Katie's summer courses. Again, she does have one with SASA that look out in our social media in the next week or so for information and to RSVP to that. We are thrilled to have you back, Katie. Thank you for coming back on Crewing the Ship stream as well. Thank you, everyone who was watching and joined us. I did see that Lily from Travolution said in the chat that you are a legend, Katie, which I have to agree.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So yes, please go follow Mesoamerican Studies Online, check out the website, sign up for the courses. Katie is wonderful and amazing. Listen to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. OG Meso. Yeah. Okay. And thank you for joining us. We will see you at our next stream, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.